Welcome to the Resolve.ai webinar series. Before we get started, let us quickly go over a few housekeeping items. We love interactive events, so please feel free to ask any question in the Q&A section, which can be accessed at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer those questions towards the end during the Q&A session. If there are more questions than we can answer during the session, we'll get back to you, we promise. This webinar is being recorded, and a recording link will be shared after the event. Thanks again for joining today, and let us get today's session started, and welcome our host.
Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar. Hi Steve, how are you doing?
Manish, always good to see you.
So let me introduce to everyone. First of all, welcome to everyone who has joined in the webinar today. Really appreciate your time. I know there might be a couple of my friends who are in the webinar today as well. So special hello to my friends from past life, if you are in the audience. So let's start by introducing Steve to the audience. Steve is our guest panelist today. He has spent a lot of his time. I mean, a lot of us people like me with gray hair can claim that we have spent 20 years or 30 years in this industry. But potentially, what we cannot claim, like Steve, is the different kind of aspects of work that he has done in the industry, in HR and HCM industry. He has been as a practitioner. He has worked as a product leader. He has worked as an advisor, and he has dealt with global organizations over a period of time. And he has, of course, is an analyst as well. So he has really covered different aspects of HR and HR related activities. Steve, welcome again.
Thanks a lot.
And by the way, Steve is also board advisor to Actionable Science as well. So we know him in that capacity. So today we are going to talk about 5 things. Number one, why is employee experience more important than ever today, right? Why now? Why are we having this conversation? Second, what are the things which are changing around us that is going to make us that we need to react to, right? As practitioners, we need to worry about them and we need to react to them. The third is contrasting the old and the new employee experience, right? Like there was an old employee experience, which is, even 5 years ago, right? What we meant by employee experience 5 years ago is different from what we mean today. And how is it different? And finally, what is the path to success? What do we need to make sure to ensure that we are going towards the success in this any journey that we do on employee experience? And finally, metrics, goals, things of that nature. Much more, those will be more in a practitioner term. That being said, let's get started. And Steve, I know you typically like to start conversations with this slide. So talk us through, tell us why.
Yeah, well, I guess you can consider it an icebreaker, but I also think it resonates with, certainly resonates with me, maybe a lot of the folks listening. When I've worked with customer organizations and HR organizations, sometimes when it comes to adopting and rolling out new capabilities, new technology, you'll have a segment of the group that is concerned about how it's going to affect them, and of course they dig in their heels. They are resistant to change, and what I tell those people is, you have a choice here. You can embrace the opportunity that comes with change, or you can be on that descent and decline into obsolescence, which is what happens when you're afraid of change.
Yep, and so true. And by the way, sometimes people forget that not taking an action might be the riskiest thing that you're doing, right? Like sometimes people say, oh, we are very conservative in our thinking. We don't want to take any risk. Well, if you don't take any action, that might be taking a risk as well. With that being said, let's talk about why employee experience is more important today than ever, right? I mean, it looks like we say that, a lot of people say that, have been saying this for a while, but I do believe that there's a special reason why today we are in a point where we need to think about this very seriously.
Yeah, I think there's two key points that are behind this slide. One is kind of the underpinning, which is the simple fact that delivering a great employee experience is going to lead to delivering a great customer experience. And we know what that leads to. It leads to better business performance. And that has highlighted for a lot of organizations how they need to operate and operate a little bit differently vis-a-vis their employees. And what does an employee experience or a great employee experience really mean? We'll get to that in a minute. So that's one point, is that relationship of employee experience and customer experience. But the other point is, as Manish has said, why now? Why is it so in everybody's face today? Well, a couple of reasons. And certainly one has to do with catastrophic events or, major challenges that are unprecedented. The state of Texas certainly had one, and the nation and the world had one in the form of the pandemic. And so what happens when you have these unprecedented events that can really stop people in their tracks and stop organizations in their tracks? You have to start thinking about, what's the impact on the employee? How do we get that employee to rise above the crisis they're dealing with and still be able to deliver value and still be able to enjoy being at their job, notwithstanding everything that's going on around them? So I think that's the timing part of this. And this little framework I have here is, historically, we thought about, with technology, we thought about what processes can be automated and what's the impact it's going to have on the business. Now we're thinking about experiences. So it's from processes to experiences, and particularly elevating those experiences. The more we elevate experiences for our workers, the more they're going to be productive. And you'll hear us talk about productivity a lot. But here, think about this. A 2,000 employee organization, if they improve productivity just 5%, that can translate into 10 million in new created value. How's that? Well, take the revenue per employee metric. Let's round it off to 100,000 per employee for revenue per employee, 2,000, and then it goes up 5%. So it's an additional 5,000 of revenue. 2,000 times 5,000 is 10 million in created value. That's why productivity is so important. Efficiency gains. How many organizations do we know that ascended the ranks within their industry sector because they captured more efficiencies? Not many, but if they're improving productivity, as I just pointed out with that illustration, if they're becoming more agile and being able to respond to both opportunities and risks in the market, those are the organizations that are ascending. And finally, what we're seeing is what used to be a very employer-centric agenda, what the organization needs to be successful. Now it's a balancing of agendas, employer agenda and employee agenda. That's a much more a proactive and forward-thinking view.
Yep. No, I agree. And by the way, I couldn't agree with you more on the natural disasters and pandemics, right? I mean, they seem to be one in a century, once in a decade kind of events, but they seem to be happening every year now, right? Like, so what happens in next year? If you are still surprised if something goes wrong next year, then I got nobody else to blame if I am surprised in 2022 if something goes wrong. Like this, things are happening. So,
and by the way, Maurice, I just had somebody text me. Manish, the other point, the other big theme is business continuity. And those disasters have led to this universal focusing on business continuity as well. So this is my framework. Yeah, go ahead.
No, walk us through this framework,
Sure. Well, with all the attention being given to employee experience, a couple of years ago, I developed this framework, and it's had a good shelf life, and it still serves me and my clients well. So I call it the 4 pillars of a great employee experience. One is this kind of universal recognition that employees have intrinsic needs. All employees have intrinsic needs. Call it a Maslow hierarchy type of thing. But the needs are, I want to do meaningful work, I want to feel valued, and I want to be productive. Number 2, the second pillar is, I want to line a sight into how my career is going to unfold and what the organization is going to do to support those career goals. Number 3 is, I want to perceive fairness and a lack of bias in terms of how I'm treated, how I'm evaluated, how I'm rewarded. And finally, and this is kind of a key theme for today's talk, is I want friction and hassle removed from my day. If there's a lot of tools, a lot of new things I have to learn, a lot of administrivia I have to deal with, I'm not going to be very happy. So I want that removed to the greatest extent possible.
Perfect. No, that makes perfect sense. This is a time-tested, pillar. I want to pick on one thread that you mentioned there, which is enterprise friction. And this is a phrase that I don't think you guys are talking enough about, right? I have not heard enough people talk about enterprise friction. And enterprise friction is a very real thing. I'll give you an example of enterprise friction. Let's say you are just trying to get something done or trying to get help, right? You are working on something and you're trying to get help. Now, you might have different kind of helps that you're trying to get. It might be some payroll issue, it might be some HR help desk, it might be finance related things. Sometimes you don't even know what kind of problem you have and which department you need to reach. And we tell people 20 different ways to get that help. Oh, if you have this kind of problem, come here. If you have now the employee is like, oh, give me a break. Like first I need to do research how to get help and then get help. I mean, that's just too much. So this is one of the aspects on how we create enterprise friction for employees, and the entire user experience and employee experience part is not very thought through. And there are solutions today that can change this game entirely, right? Like employees are trying to get simplification in their life, like just you and me, like average people. What are we trying to do? I mean, we got bills to pay and jobs to do and kids to feed and lunches to make, I'm sure. So how do you simplify your life is the question that we have, and that's what we're trying to do. So simple, single window, single, how simple you can make for the employee is a big thing, and that will reduce the enterprise friction.
Yeah, employees should not have to spend a lot of time thinking about how to navigate the organization to get simple things done. They want to focus on their job and excelling in their job and moving up in their careers.
Yeah, especially during the pandemic, people want to feel productive, right? Everyone wants to make sure that their bosses and everyone knows that they're productive, right? So there's a little bit of pressure on people to make sure that they're productive. And they want to make sure that people understand they are productive. Now, if you're stuck with some issue which is useless, that reduces your productivity, it increases your stress, and whatnot. Moving on to the second topic, which is, what is happening around us that we need to kind of take into account, right? As we plan anything, what is it that we need to take into account? So walk us through, your six channels of change.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as Manish said, I've been at HR technology for a while now, and this last 5-year period has been totally unprecedented in terms of sea changes as a result of CSEA changes as a result of new technology that is so innovative that 10 years ago we probably wouldn't have even thought it was possible. So I'm not going to go over all of this. We could have another webinar for that. But for those that are familiar with robotic process automation, we're talking about structured, well-defined business rules that are powering a process. You need very little, if any, human intervention. Could be done across the business, including in IT and HR service desks. AI, I use the 3 Ps a lot when I talk about what happens as a result of AI, what's the benefits of AI, the 3 Ps being personalize, predict, and prescribe. Virtual agents, and not all virtual agents are created equal. You have some that are more intelligent than another and fused with system intelligence and the ability to learn. And the last one I'll mention for now is Internet of Things. In simple terms, it's using sensors that trigger actions. So again, 5-10 years ago, just like Tesla 10 years ago, nobody knew what that was. These things are really changing the world.
Yep, absolutely. And one more thing, if I may add to this, is the unexpected one, right? Which we need to pay attention, in my humble opinion, which is Teams, Zoom, Slack, and all that. I mean, just take if we had a magical way to measure how much time we are spending today on Teams versus how much time we are spending on Teams in February of 2020, right? You will find this has gone like 10x, right? And anyone who is planning anything in the future needs to take into account these kind of changes. And also, just to add to your AI component, right? Like, see, listen, the difference between our personal life and work life seems to be reducing in a lot of ways. So at home we use Alexa and hello, Google and whatnot. So it is not surprising that people will want a conversational interface at work as well. To be honest, right? Conversational interface actually, in our opinion, is the interface for future. I think I like to call the old interfaces rectangular interfaces, where everything was like small or big rectangles, right? You have a box with, oh man, I think we are all getting over those interfaces, and the new interfaces is the conversational interface.
And one of the big beauties of it is basically no learning curve. We're just being ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't even have to learn either the system or the business process behind it. The AI will walk you through that, right? So let's talk about the difference between the old and the new. When you're constructing this and designing this, how do you think about this modern employee experience? So Steve, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as an industry analyst, well, I do advisory too. But on the analyst side, was what was kind of interesting and maybe a little amusing to me was in recent years, a lot of enterprise software vendors came out, said, leading with the employee experience. But the perspective and the orientation they had was the employee experience using systems, and preferably their systems. So, I think that the market has risen up and said, there's more to an employee experience than the experience using systems. It's what they're thinking about, what they're feeling, what they're doing. And technology will play a role in a lot of that. But coaching employees plays a role, and having a well-defined career path kind of program for employees plays a role. So the modern employee experience in terms of an orientation, it's now you have technology components and you have non-technology components. That's what I'm highly recommending the orientation be for organizations, whether it be on the customer or vendor side, that are trying to elevate the employee experience.
Cool. Very true. And by the way, I found this, I am quoting this so often. I hope I don't have to pay any royalty to this lady, but she made a comment. There's someone that I knew on my LinkedIn. She made this comment on LinkedIn. And she said, well, earlier we used to attract people using foosball tables and catered food and whatnot, right? Those were our tools to get the best employees and retain them. But all that is gone. I mean, nobody cares if you have a snooker table in your offices. We are not even going there. So what is important is what tools you're giving us, right? And how my experience is from morning to evening when I'm glued to my laptop and trying to get things accomplished. That becomes very important. So therefore, there is another aspect of why this is so important today and how the game is changing very quickly. So let's put some practitioner's hat on now, Steve. So we talked about why it is important, what are the things to, and how to build it, what is the framework around it. But let's talk about now the practitioner's hat. So what are the things to do and not to do when you're going on this path of creating a better employee experience? So give us some perspective there, Steve.
Well, certainly one major lens in terms of what to do and what to avoid is the change management lens. And change management can relate to organizational changes, it can relate to job changes, bringing in new technology, a restructuring, a merger and acquisition, what have you. And all of those kind of events have something in common, pretty universal. So in this bell curve, on the left side of the curve, imagine a change is announced. What do most people do, or many people do when a change is announced? They think about, how's it going to affect me, my job, my career goals, my pocket, etc. And those concerns and thoughts start to distract, start to take away from productivity. What can the organization do about it? And to use fancy terms, the amplitude or the height of that curve is like, how crazy do people get? I hate to use that word. How much chaos, how much hysteria, how much distraction factor. The latency or the width of that curve is how long it's going to go on for. Is it going to be a couple of weeks or is it going to be 2 years? So what I say is focus on compressing that period of destabilization, distraction, and chaos by communicating effectively, communicating with transparency. And when you don't have all the answers as an organization and you can't tell someone exactly what their role is going to be in the new world order, let them know when they may have that clarity. Just being upfront and communicating, because a big part of resistance to change is not knowing and not having visibility into how you're going to be affected.
No, so true, so true. This is another kind of flattening the curve, right? Like you need to bring the time of chaos less. By the way, there are many new tools and technologies now available for change management, right? So earlier, the change management for us was mostly emails, right? How do you communicate change to organization? Emails. Not true anymore, right? Today, especially if I may, mention this, we have a product called Morsel.ai, www.morsel.ai, which actually is a very effective change management product, which is AI driven and conversational, and it brings the information to people in microbytes and so on and so forth. So essentially what I'm saying is there are new tools available. So don't think when I'm thinking of my change management, I just have the old tools and emails which are out there. By the way, adoption is also a challenge, isn't it, Steve? And what can be, especially for newer technologies, what can be the solution in your opinion? What kind of things you can do to actually improve it?
Well, to keep it simple here, I would say, there's a perspective that the organization needs to have, and the sensitivity to what people go through during periods of change. That perspective, what you could do about it with effective communications. That's one side of the coin. But the other side of the coin is the very practical, tangible approach of making change fun. So gamification stands out in my mind as a way to make change fun. So when you're rolling out, for example, um, a service desk virtual agent, and it's based on a knowledge base. Well, you're going to have a lot of people in the organization that can be viewed as experts with one type of knowledge or another, right? And so people, have a need for self-esteem. Recognize people for their expertise. Recognize people for how rapidly they're adopting the new world order, so to speak. Again, make change fun. There's a lot of opportunities for that.
Yep. I think gamification in this area is very, very important and coming very fast. And if I may add, the other thing that I think, and I keep talking about this, but a lot of these processes and employee interactions are going to come to teams. So we have coined this phrase. This is new, right off the oven. Teamsify, right? Teamsification and Teamsify, folks. Remember, you heard it here first. So teamsification means you're bringing your business processes, your knowledge management, your service desk right to teams, right? So employee service on teams, easy access to policy and procedures on teams, right? Employee onboarding, offboarding on teams, right? Change management or micro learning on teams, employee help desk on teams. And when I say on teams, I'm already, the one thing that I'm not saying is AI is included in all that. So this is the kind of future, in our humble opinion, that a lot of people are looking at, and our products, both resolve.ai and morsel.ai, help people reach there. Actually, the way it works is everything, like I said, is on Teams. You can just go here, open the app, and within the app is workflow and whatnot. Even the learning part, this is actually morsel.ai, which is you can actually learn, assign micro learning to people and see how they're doing on Teams. So let's talk about the metrics, outcomes, what to expect if you go down this path, right? What, things of that nature, right? What to measure, right? Why don't we talk about that? And I can talk a little bit here. I can talk a little bit traditional stuff like, mean time to resolution, right? Everyone should measure. CSAT, customer employee satisfaction, sure. But there are new things too. For example, accuracy of AI. How accurate is your conversational AI? Since we have been talking about conversational AI. Or what percentage of issues are resolved by AI and what percentage of issues are resolved by humans, right? That percentage might be important. These are new metrics. Nobody was measuring these metrics even a year ago. But people are now transitioning to measuring new metrics. How many knowledge skills you created, like Alexa, you created skills, right? How many knowledge skills your organization created in your AI system? How many process skills you added in your AI system last month? These are the metrics. These are new kind of metrics that people will have to measure as they go along this path.
And Manish, what I would add to that is metrics need to be looked at in concert with other metrics, so that you want to get the most insight and actionable insight. Then you need to look at a picture, and it's multiple metrics that are telling a story. In recruiting, they use time to fill, but if you just look at time to fill a job in isolation, what's so great about filling a job faster with the wrong people? So you want to look at quality as well. This is, when the expression HR transformation is bandied about, and they say, what does it look like? Well, one way to visualize that is, the amount of time that's being spent on different types of activities from within the HR organization. And traditionally, majority of time, if you add up all the hours for the HR staff, they were probably spending time on administration, compliance, et cetera. Answering questions, oftentimes repetitive and routine questions. Well, you want to transform the HR department, you want to get to that middle box, so business partnering, advising and consulting with your internal customers and strategic business unit heads, how they, what they want to do with their line of business, and what are the workforce implications of that, and advise them on that. That's where you want to spend the most time.
That's so interesting, right? Like repetitive tasks can be done by AI, but the high value task where we actually often not able to spend enough time. By the way, everyone says I'm short of time. Maybe that's where we need to spend more time. I'll wrap up with one more. Since we are talking numbers, I'll give one more numbers, and this connects back to the thing you said earlier about 5% productivity. So we did some study in some of our clients, and the kind of productivity increase we are seeing is around 4.5% productivity improvement in employees. 20 minutes per day saved for an employee on an average by creating better employee experience. That's a huge number, and these are conservative numbers. So you're talking about in a 1,000 people organization, 45 employees worth of productivity coming back to you, right? And this is from the employee side. The other side is the shared services desk side, right, where you're creating a services and giving it to people. That itself you can automate around anywhere between 30 to 70% kind of tasks which are shared and repetitive, and there's savings there as well. So there's two sides of the coin, the service desk coin and by the way, when I say service desk, it includes a whole variety of things, right? It includes, for example, training and change management and a whole, we call that enterprise service management, to be honest. So two sides of the coin, some numbers for people to keep in case they want to refer back after 6 months, 18 months, if they're making enough progress. I think with that, Steve, we are almost towards the end of our session, and looking at the time, we did fairly well. There are 2 minutes to go. uh, I don't know how we managed it, but if there are any questions, we'll be happy to take it. Otherwise, we'll say goodbye to people. Are there any questions that we are seeing? Actually, we
can
are
answer them afterwards.
in 1 minute down. So why don't we thank everyone for joining today? Really appreciate your time. So if you want to look up resolve.ai and marcel.ai, and thank Steve as always to stop by and share your wisdom. Appreciate it. Good day, everyone.
My pleasure, Manish. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.